This episode is sponsored by the IoT job site, the world's only dedicated space for applying for and advertising IoT vacancies across the world. Register now for job alerts or get in touch via let's talk at theiotjobsite.com.
Welcome back to the IoT podcast show. As always, I'm your host, Tom White. Today we are joined by Oliver Tucker. Guys, before we get into it, quick one. Could you do me a favour? Could you like, comment and subscribe to this video? My team use this information so we can give you more of what you love in the future. Oliver is the CEO and co-founder of Wireless Logic. Wireless Logic is a leading IoT and M2M connectivity platform provider with over 8 million subscribers globally. Oliver, welcome to the IoT podcast show.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Wireless Logic is a company that I know and heard of for quite a while now. So great to have you here and to talk about the business. As usual, can we just kick off by explaining a little bit about your background and what inspired you to start Wireless Logic? Because I think it's nearly 20 years since you've been incorporated now.
Yeah, nearly 22 years, to be honest.
Wow, okay.
I do remember actually I was recently quoted in some press article, and when they quoted me, said that Oliver, who still remains CEO after 22 years. I'm not sure if that was a comment on my capability, or that I've survived 3 rounds of private equity. But yes, it is indeed 22 years. I guess, I've always been in the IT industry since leaving university many moons ago now. And I guess more specifically, I've always been involved, if you like, in terms of mobile devices, PDA type devices, and again, specifically in terms of mobile data. I think it was probably like a lot of other people, the dot-com boom, if you like, of 2000, where everyone seemed to be sort of wanting to start their own business, as a result of the explosion in terms of the internet. And me and my co-founder, Philip Cole, at the time, who were working at another organization, we thought, actually, mobile data, mobilizing back-end applications on PDA devices from enterprises. This was before, don't forget, things like RIM and BlackBerry, was probably the future. It wasn't M2M at those days, but, it was mobilizing back-end applications. So, yeah, we set it up in 2000. Probably our timing wasn't the best because obviously there was the dot-com bust of 2000, post the millennial bug that was constantly talked about throughout 1999. And I think, we were relatively late developers. So we originally sold the company back in, I guess it was 2003 to a UK sort of telecoms group who had a voice, service provider and wanted the sort of IT and data expertise as data was, coming to the fore in those days. And so, yeah, we were acquired by that organization and sat alongside them, I guess for the next sort of 7-8 years. And we tried to buy it back multiple times, but, in 2011, we were successful. And I guess that was our first private equity investment. And I think since then, we've obviously expanded considerably. Primarily, I guess, internationally. We were we were UK based and focused in 2011. And over the next 3 years, we expanded organically into France, Germany, and Spain. Anyone who tells you it's easy, doesn't cost twice as much, takes 3 times as long is probably lying. It's hard yards. But in 2013, we reached about 1 million subscribers under management. And today we have over 8.5 million IoT subscriptions globally. And, whilst we did the original international expansion in 2011 to 2015, through our own efforts, we then kind of in 2015 with our second private equity investment, we kind of thought, okay, how do we do this quicker, faster? So we looked in terms of expanding through acquisition. And over the last 5 years now, we've done 12 acquisitions, which has
Wow.
given us sort of additional geographic coverage, as well as technological advantage, which, as I say, are probably our two main key metrics. Getting good people is also another metric when we evaluate a potential target. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of been some of the evolution, if you like, of wireless logic. I mean, I think obviously, our product also, in particular, our platform has evolved considerably over the last 14 years. And it really wasn't until sort of 2006, 2007 that we kind of realized that what we were doing in the enterprise space, we could kind of use in the M2M space. And actually, it was my business partner, Phil, who kind of came across that market and said, look, this is going to be huge. We should really be focusing in terms of machine to machine data and security and those type of things. And as I say, that's 14 years ago when we really got involved in the IoT space. And our proposition, then as it is now, is based really on a whole range of different services that deliver, I guess, what we believe is an unparalleled sort of level of control and security for IoT applications. We're very much a horizontal provider. We work across all market segments, delivering, cellular IoT managed services, both in the aftermarket, which is really, for the last 14 years where the market has been, but now increasingly in terms of embedded solutions. So more looking at sort of OEMs and big enterprise who want to deploy assets around the globe. And as I say, we're a horizontal player, which I believe de-risks our business. We have about 2,500 solution providers across all vertical markets. Alongside, if you like, our multi-industry sector expertise, you combine that, as I say, with our high level of service. Our core strength, I think, is our ability to overlay our private secure infrastructure across, pretty much most of the global, mobile network operators. And this, of course, keeps our customers' data and indeed their reputations, secure. So, yeah, sure. Look, our mission is to simplify, it's to orchestrate IoT connectivity for customers through our end-to-end managed services. And, this does, it requires a consultative type approach, from advising customers on optimizing LPWAN, power consumption and device certification, to orchestrating complex eSIM ecosystems and partnerships. Because, despite what people think, it's pretty complicated stuff. And I think, you asked me what inspired me. I mean, I think that, what continues to excite me about our industry, after all this time, is that, I fundamentally believe that, we are about accelerating the pace of, positive environmental, social, and economic change. And to play a small part in that is pretty awesome.
Thank you. What a great introduction to the show. Absolutely. And to take the last thing that you said, we're big on sustainability, on driving. I don't want to say tech for good, but it is tech for good. It just feels like a phrase that's overused, right, in the industry. But at the heart of what everyone is doing, it's enriching people's lives in some form or another, and that's got to be a great thing. And I've said this in the past in other podcasts that I've hosted. I've come from an entertainment background, right? So I did a lot of work in the set-top box industry, and the phrase was always, "It's just TV," right? Yeah. No matter how deep you kind of get, it's as much as you can go with that. But this is almost limitless in terms of capabilities, which leads me on really nicely to the next question I wanted to ask you. Clearly, IoT is expanding constantly. Whether we have as many connected devices as one thought we might have at this point is another question, but it's going a lot more complex as we go global. What are the biggest challenges when it comes to IoT deployment in your view?
I think you're right. I mean, I think IoT is evolving all the time, and with technology and industry regulations, they're being regularly updated. We see, constant challenges. I mean, having said that, I'd also see, there are not many industries that are growing at sort of mid-teens growth. So, against those challenges, there are, so many different opportunities. But, I think some of the sort of current challenges, that we see at the moment, obviously is, GPRS sunsetting. We've seen that happen in the States. With some networks, I think it was AT&T, it happened pretty quickly. So, providers like ourselves didn't have a huge amount of time to be able to sort of get their customers swapped out in terms of SIMs and stuff like that. I think it's easier in Europe because, the runway to be able to swap out those type of legacy subscribers is a lot longer. So, some of the assets anyway will be end of line, and therefore to swap to newer, different technology is easier. But I think, still network sunsetting is a challenge. We're seeing more recently now in terms of permanent roaming restrictions where, networks, if you're cyber squatting on a network, particularly if you're doing quite a lot of data, they'll kind of kick you off. So I think, permanent roaming restrictions are a challenge. And I think, we're seeing, LP-WAN, 5G rollouts, which, again, challenges, but also opportunities. And I think, due to this complexity, you could argue, shifting landscapes. I think, customers increasingly are looking, if you like, for partners who can help them, automate, aggregate, if you like, their connectivity solutions. And that, as I say, I don't think this is easy. I think people do think, some of this stuff is relatively easy. It's, but it isn't. It's complicated. What bearer service do you want to use? Is it cellular? Is it, satellite, LP-WAN? What is it? Where are your assets going to end up? What geographies are they going to end up in? And therefore, what kind of coverage do you need? Where will they land? Well, where potentially could that asset transit through? The other kind of thing is, how much data is going to be transmitted? It's very different if you're transmitting kilobytes of data to, if you like, terabytes of data, which security cameras can do, as an example. So ultimately, I think that, people like Wireless Logic, our experience lets, if you like, our customers focus on their own service delivery, where they have their own expertise. And I think, in particular, what we see from customers at the moment, customer requirements is very much, they want increased control and visibility. They need resilience. They want redundancy. And, we'll probably come on to this later, I'm sure. They want the security. There've been a lot of scare stories about security out there. So security is paramount for a lot of our customers. And, they want a provider who can offer, multiple different services, whether that's eSIM, whether that's remote SIM provisioning platforms and device management and certification. They want a partner who can, maximize coverage, potentially across the globe. And of course, a lot of this stuff, IoT data that's being transmitted, is not nice to have data like your Facebook or your LinkedIn or whatever on your iPhone. This is mission critical data. And therefore, for mission critical data, these are business critical applications. And therefore, things like 24/7 support when something can't connect is vitally, vitally important. And I think a partner who can simplify sourcing, management, support of connectivity solutions, as well as potentially provide, end-to-end or device cloud integration, is becoming more of a requirement from our customers. And I think that when it comes to technology, there is often, the challenge of customers understanding, what it means for them and importantly, what can it do for them? If we take eSIM, for example, it's kind of, everyone's talking about this at the moment. And as we all know, traditional SIM cards can often restrict opportunities for our, IoT connectivity and flexibility, particularly for large scale deployment. So, in reality, network swaps, are either operationally impossible or prohibitively expensive. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to send an engineer out to a remote site to be able to swap out a SIM card. I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever. And I think, this is especially true for globally distributed IoT devices, or if you like, those devices that I've just kind of alluded to that are difficult to access in the field. And I think, you take eSIM as an example when we talk about challenges in terms of, what technology kind of addresses, is that, flexibility across the lifetime of an IoT deployment, to mitigate regulatory, commercial, operational challenges. That's a real, core customer need. The need to kind of minimize the number of SKUs in the manufacturing process for global deployments, so a single SIM that can be programmed to work basically virtually anywhere in the world. And I think you add to that the sort of pressure from product designers to minimize the space that the SIM takes up, on the PCB of a device, for instance, and of course the improved reliability and security that a chip SIM provides. And I think, what people don't realize, and we've seen this a lot over the last 18 months, is that people just think, you can get, an eSIM and you can just swap willy-nilly, right? You can, I can get better commercials of this, provider. I'll just swap. It ain't going to happen. The networks will not allow that to happen. And I think, what people don't realize is that, how eSIM profile swapping is not as simple as, flipping a switch. You need agreements across the chain, that complex API integrations that you have to do. And don't forget, what people also forget, there are going to be additional costs to swap profiles, and not only that, but there are going to be additional costs such as the SIM itself, fees for the management for the network swapping that customers will need to factor in. And that, of course, could make adoption uneconomical, if you like, for smaller deployments. So I think, those are some of the sort of challenges that we're seeing in that. I mean, I think, just, while I'm talking about that, I think another challenge is data security. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, data security has always been a concern for the industry, because there have been so many scare stories out there about, baby monitors being hacked or whatever it is. And therefore, I think the need to build in security as part of a product design, not retrofitting it, which we've done in the aftermarket. I think, doing it as part of a product design is going to be even more important for OEMs. But, against that, the good news is that, security standards are now being put in place, things like secure by design, which has been defined by the government, for consumer sort of IoT manufacturers. And that, when you consider that the majority of data breaches come from, if you like, human error or inappropriate processes, we also now start to hear from customers that ISO accreditation, is now a prerequisite, regardless of what, your product set or your product offering is. So, yes, I mean, I do think, complexity and size of deployments, does create challenges for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah. You touched on some really interesting things there, and things I want to explore a little bit further. So the eSIM topic. So yes, this is big at the moment, and we had Nick Earl from SI on recently talking about their work involved with eSIMs. It isn't just as simple as being able to switch, is it? And I think a lot of people have said that because you've removed that the necessity for a physical SIM, etc. It doesn't necessarily mean the legislation or the APIs are changed, etc., etc. So the barriers kind of remain, even though the potential is there.
Yep.
And that's something to consider. And on the security side as well, really interesting you should mention about the government, because there is a white paper, isn't there, on IoT security? In fact, I've seen it because we're members of the IoT Security Foundation, and it's nice to see that, and it's nice to see some of the advancements that are taking place. So certainly on the secure side. So I think there are issues and hurdles and things that people need to overcome to get past this, and these are one of the reasons why we don't have so many connected devices or where we should be because of this, and it's a continual theme that we see sometimes in the podcast. But I think recognition and understanding it is obviously the first part, and then it's trying to resolve it. And that's a nice link on to my next question, actually. So you and Wireless Logic as a business have been involved in some really pioneering use cases, lots of different sectors and solutions. thought maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the great things that your business has done and some of the use cases, if we could.
Sure. I mean, I think, our SIM connectivity platform, SIMPro, which, it's basically the DNA of wireless logic. It's if you like, the heart of our offering. Provides complete control for, customers' IoT assets, irrespective of, bearer service, irrespective of network. It basically is one pane of glass, giving the customer one window visibility for management, billing, reporting, as I say, across multiple network SIM estates, could be across the globe. And I think the range and flexibility of our commercial structures, I believe is a true differentiator for many of our customers. To be able to aggregate from a billing perspective, to be able to pull data, not only across the same operator, but across different operators. Having contracts if you want them for longevity of assets that are going to be out in the field for a long time, to having the flexibility of, if you like, pay as you go or 30-day type contracts with top up and all that kind of stuff. I think one of the things, I'll probably mention it a few times, to us, it's all about choice. It's choice of different networks because, different commercials, different coverage, all that type of stuff. There is no, in my belief, one size fits all in the IoT space. Choice, flexibility is key and kind of underlines sort of the product offering that we give out to the market. So, I've talked about, we work, very consultatively with our customers, both in the embedded now and, we've been doing the aftermarket, as I say, for the last 14 or so years. To be able to select, networks, solutions, commercial structures, that is optimal, for the particular user case. And, when you consider that, well over 3/4 of our subscribers across our base, so that's whatever it is, 3/4 of 8.5 million subscribers, they are using across their estate of assets, multiple network operators. They're not using one or two, they're using multiple network operators. So I think, our network agnostic positioning, having local profiles, through partnerships with, I think it's about 45, if not more, operators around the globe. And as I say, I do think, on an unrivaled commercial scale, because of our size now, continue to be, if you like, critical differentiating factors to our customers. I think the strength, if you like, of our M&O relationships puts us in a very strong position to secure, as I say, the widest coverage. We have access to key local EUICC profiles, going back to having local profiles because of the permanent roaming type issues. Local EUICC profiles, I think, are important. Access to 5G services as they are made available to providers like ourselves. And I think, you might have seen in the news relatively recently our agreement with EE in the UK, which we signed, I think, towards the end of last year. That is pretty unique in the respect that, we can do terabytes on a EUICC SIM, etc., with the potential for a backup onto another profile in the event of, a network or mast site going down or whatever. That kind of insurance policy is very, very important to our customers. And as I say, I think, as I alluded to, I think our scale enables us to offer, highly competitive commercials. But importantly, it's backed up with the necessary SLAs and support. And I think, we've talked about the aftermarket, we've talked about sort of the OEM, the line of fit. I think, now having, our own, if you like, built for IoT, full stack network solution, does enable us to deliver enterprise level connectivity, control, security. And I think, as the IoT connectivity market moves towards, if you like, digitization, so the physical cards that have been very much in the aftermarket being replaced by embedded or integrated SIM technology, I think wireless logic is very well positioned to become, if you like, the orchestration point for the management of, in-life connectivity and optimizing profiles. And,
yeah.
And, also, Tom, I mean, one of the things also, I've mentioned it before, but we shouldn't forget or underestimate, the requirement for good SLAs and 24/7 support. as I say, a lot of IoT data is mission critical. It's not nice to have. It's, vitally important information for companies to be able to operate. And therefore, sure, good commercials for customers are important. But so is the need for that data to be submitted reliably, securely, with the appropriate SLAs. And I think for us, delivering, if you like, high quality, local language, 24/7 where required, in country, does remain a critical, capability that I believe differentiates wireless logic, from some of our competitors, not all, but some. And I think our presence now, in multiple geographies, and the security and the network monitoring capabilities that we give to our customers, does give them the confidence that any issues can be identified and, of course, resolved, importantly, very, very quickly. And this is, really, really important when you consider some of our customers, in markets such as, I don't know, food delivery, where connectivity issues have a direct revenue impact for them. And, when you take lone worker, we provide, some of the police for domestic violence and stuff, and that is where connectivity is mission critical. Or even, dare I say it, could be the difference between life and death. So that reliability, those SLAs, that security of data, all those kind of things, as I say, it's not just, oh, here's a bit of airtime. There's a lot more than that in terms of where we sit, within the value chain. And I think also, one of the things I'll also add is that, for some very large customers, who maybe have their own existing, direct MNO agreements, and, let's not hide it. Some of them do, because they've got thousands and thousands of phone subscriptions on the back of iPhones or Samsungs or whatever it is, car manufacturers in particular. So they've got their existing, multiple probably direct MNO agreements. But what they want to do is not necessarily use our connectivity services, but what they want to do is use our SIMPro platform to manage all those different MNO agreements. So that's where we provide our platform, if you like, purely as a service, white labeled in many cases, but we're not providing the, if you like, the data airtime connectivity. And this licensing model allows us to, if you like, power, other brands, with our service capabilities, allowing, if you like, them to be able to offer, a broader solution out to their customers, and maybe reaching segments that maybe would be difficult to reach through their own direct channels. We do have actually, just as an example, a major enterprise customer in Germany, in the transport sector, which is actively using, our PaaS offering. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think finally how we address some of our customer challenges, we've talked previously about the challenges of data security, management and IoT deployment, and how we address those. We obviously offer private APN, a range of VPN services to route data securely and reliably. We also offer other services that, if you like, further mitigate risk and loss to our customers through features like IMEI locking, whitelisting, capping, bespoke Java applet development for SIMs, etc. And, don't forget, our data management is all ISO accredited, which also, enhances, I believe, our proposition fairly significantly.
Yeah. I just to touch on a few things there, and there's a lot, right? I think in terms of the provenance of that data, you said this earlier in the show, this isn't social media, this is critical data, and the SLA for keeping that up, support, 24/7 support, ensuring that it remains is so important and should never be overlooked. And I think that's fantastic and testament to the business, right? 3 PE rounds, 12 acquisitions, 8 million subs, or was it 8.5 million subs? It's that's a lot. There's a lot of use cases here. There's a lot of understanding, and there's a hell of a lot of data to go on as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about, if I could, about smart cities. So obviously, I know that the business is involved within smart cities. What sort of applications and use cases are you seeing proliferate at the moment within the smart city movement?
Yeah, I also just realized, Tom, I probably didn't answer as much in terms of some of the user cases where you were talking about in terms of some of the challenges. I mean, just before we move on to smart cities, if I may,
Sure.
I do think actually some of the user case studies, right, really bring it to life in many respects. And, maybe, in the hopefully at the end of a pandemic, but, I'll start, if you like, with a COVID specific case study. Because I think that's pretty interesting. When I talk about opportunities, when the original lockdown on March, whenever it was, 17th or 23rd in 2020 happened, I think all of us had our heads in our hands thinking, oh God, what the hell's going to happen? And I think, after the initial hiatus of, 4-6 weeks where people were sort of, then I think, what was very interesting to us was actually a lot of the new opportunities that, came out of, the pandemic. I mean, for instance, we've been working with Hadrian, which is one of our solution providers, for in-store occupancy management, so the monitoring of people, in and out of supermarkets, petrol stations to ensure social distancing. That would probably never have happened before COVID. We've also done time attendance in Nightingale hospitals. That was a relatively short-lived application, to be fair, but even so, we wouldn't have seen that. Other user case studies, which I think, as I say, bring some of this IoT stuff to life is, with Skydrones.
Yeah.
Skydrones, supply their customers, with a full end-to-end solution to enable, them to monitor, manage, control their drone fleets through, 4G, LTE connectivity. Bbox actually is really interesting. They provide their customers, with, you could argue, a better quality of life through solar powered energy systems that target hard to reach locations throughout Africa, as well as, some of the developing world. For many people in these areas, the typical kind of monthly income is, less than $200. And with upfront costs for things like, kerosene, batteries, charging points, it was only the people with relatively high incomes like farmers who could afford, in terms of, such luxuries. And Bbox, many years ago saw the need for a low cost subscription based service, providing, if you like, remotely located people the opportunity to have access to energy supply. But also, then they bolted on, accessories such as TV, radio, LED lights, etc., meaning families will be able to connect to the, if you like, the modern day world. I mean, that's a pretty pretty cool user case study when you think about it. The Environment Agency, we've talked about sustainability and stuff like that. The Environment Agency, their application is about safeguarding people and the environment, through flood monitoring. So they collect data, I think, from 5,500 sites across the UK. And they have a solution that provides secure, always-on communications to transmit data, via obviously our resilient infrastructure, with no risk of failure, to central locations. Because obviously, if there's flooding that's going to happen, they need to know when and how and all that type of stuff. So, they need to be able to respond to rapidly changing environmental conditions, and having that, if you like, consistent, uninterrupted connectivity is paramount. And just one to finish up on that, in terms of use cases, because I always think, user case studies really bring IoT alive, because people don't really, there are more machines on the planet than there are people. And yet, it's only single digits percentages that are actually connected. So when you think in terms of the opportunities for all those other machines to be connected, but Brighter, for instance, another one of our solution providers, they do diabetes monitoring. So, enables remote monitoring of blood sugar levels, via their, app on an iPhone or whatever. So, that's helping people to live normal, and safe lives. Again, that's pretty cool in the age of, people saying, well, I have no access to GPs or anything else like that, to do all this health monitoring remotely. Again, that's a pretty cool user case study.
Completely, and there's some fantastic ones there, and I'm glad we touched on that actually before we moved on, because remote patient monitoring in general is a massive topic, isn't it? You've got initiatives like Constant Companion and various other products and services out there at the moment. And that's great. And it touches upon what we first said about the social, sustainable view that this has. And it does bring it to life, because I think, one of the beauties certainly about this podcast is that we have listeners who are involved within the industry and people who aren't. And it's really those that drive it home about why this is so important. And, the hope is these single digit figures that aren't, machines that aren't that are currently connected, we can drive that up into the teens and further, right? Because it's so important that we have this common understanding. But it's great. It's great to talk about it. So on the note of smart cities, so this comes up quite a bit. Certainly buildings, and our previous podcast we recorded. It was almost a shocking figure to me. But they said we spend 90% of our time inside buildings. And I thought, crikey, is it that much, right?
Yeah.
So the whole smart city, smart building story is a really interesting one. I'd love to talk a little bit more about that if we could, Oliver.
Sure. I mean, I think, it is one of the largest sort of, connected markets, smart city deployments, I think they're increasingly, getting bigger across, the whole globe. And I think, that growth, has been driven by, multiple factors. We talk about reducing emissions, creating a quieter, a healthier environment in which we all want to live in, the drive, I guess, to net zero. Increasing efficiency in energy use and logistics, improving transport infrastructure to make city travel quick and obviously with low emissions. Ensuring that cities are safer places to be with, like it or not, with more CCTV type cameras. And of course, it supporting consumer demand for more, digital lifestyles, the immediacy, the convenience, the instant kind of society. So I think, we are very much seeing increased applications that improve the safety, efficiency of city environments. And we're connecting streetlights, refuse bins, air quality measurement devices, as I say, as well as sort of CCTV type solutions. And I think, with the pandemic creating multiple challenges, as we've talked about for the health sector, we're also connecting, as the last sort of user case study alluded to, remote patient monitoring and independent living applications. And these applications obviously reduce the need for hospital visits, allow people to live independently. There are huge benefits there. And I think also within sort of smart cities type stuff, we're enabling user case studies such as last mile delivery, smart parking, traffic management, and of course, EV charging infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, where do you think this is all going? What's the future of smart cities? We have an inkling of what's happening at the moment and what's being developed. But if we were to fast forward 10 years' time, what can we expect to see?
I think there'll be applications out there that we haven't even thought of today. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And I think, as LP-WAN networks are rolled out across the globe, I think, mass IoT, is becoming increasingly economic and cost beneficial. With this comes the challenge of power saving for non-mains powered devices, whether it's utility meters or refuse sensors or what have you. So, that's where we work quite closely with embedded partners and customers, to help them sort of optimize power consumption through both, product design and configuration. I think, again, in terms of case studies, we see companies like Voi, they're a micro scooter rental company. They're deploying into multiple cities across Europe. And, they're hugely innovative, to meet the needs of users and city dwellers. So their scooters, for example, not only have geolocation capability, but, are increasingly being used to measure air quality, to detect possible hazards, to improve safety. And I think for them, when we worked with them, they very much wanted to minimize the number of SKUs in their manufacturing process because, as I say, they do deploy into multiple cities. Um, and as such, for that, I think we delivered a hybrid eSIM multi-IMSI solution, that delivered not only on those sort of current needs, but also the future proofing that they also required. I think, other examples, and again, I think in terms of smart cities, EV charging. I mean, that again is pretty front of mind with a lot of people at the moment, obviously with petrol cars obviously being stopped as of in 8 years or whatever it is, 2030. We work with a solution provider called, Plug and Go. They offer a full turnkey solution for, if you like, slow to fast EV charging. And this includes, everything from footfall surveys, obtaining grid location, planning permissions, site design, layout, infrastructure installation, obviously promoting the charge points, monitoring, regular client reports in terms of site upgrades, all giving, if you like, the client, total peace of mind. So, to securely connect their fleet of charging stations, we work very much with Plug and Go. And I think this was actually an unsteered roaming solution, fixed IP for secure two-way communications. And I think, we had to make the solution compliant with the, I think it's the Open Charge Point Protocol, if I've got that right, the OCPP. I think there are different variations of it, but, we had to be compliant in terms of that. And therefore using sort of Simpro, they were able to monitor, manage, all their subscribers through one window, multiple networks, all that type of stuff. So again, I think that's the kind of sort of user case study that we're seeing in terms of smart cities. I think MSOL is another one. It's very much, again, in terms of sustainability and environment, it's very much a data focused air and noise pollution monitoring solution, that enables businesses to drive, interventions to reduce, road traffic, transport pollution, etc. And I think, by deploying their monitoring equipment, cameras and vehicle tags, the company's able to detect any air quality issues. They're able to monitor noise, sound spectrum, and therefore that helps them understand the causes of pollution, within a particular vicinity. So yeah, I think, those are just a couple of examples of how I think, IoT is enhancing our environment, and maybe sort of, how we're seeing some of the user cases within sort of smart cities kind of come to life.
Yeah. There's some fantastic examples. And, I'm sat here in Bristol recording this podcast today, and I think there's probably 100 Voi scooters outside our office, and it's certainly taken over here. But one of the great things that you just said that I didn't even contemplate was the fact that they may be used to measure air quality, and that's a really nice benefit from the inclusion of micromobility, but also EV and other devices that we can have in and around a city, is the fact that they can double up to do other things.
Yeah, and to be honest, look, I really believe that cities across the globe, are really embracing, IoT technology, or just technology in general, because they need to meet the challenges, the expectations of people who are living in cities, but want a fulfilling, convenient, and secure city life. And I think some of the commitments that were made at COP26, they will become a major motivator for city planners in particular. And I think therefore we are likely to see more micromobility and public transport infrastructure initiatives coming along. I think the 15-minute concept, being able to get anywhere in a city within 15 minutes, I think will become an ambition for many cities. I think we'll see the sort of digital lifestyles, and the associated immediacy and convenience. My kids, for instance, when they order something, from, I don't know, delivery here or delivery or whatever, they want it in 10 minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that kind of immediacy, the convenience, that will continue,
Yes.
to evolve.
Yes.
And I think, from when you look at smart cities, from a city planning, from a management perspective, the availability of mass IoT means that everything, can and ultimately will be connected. So street lights, parking spaces to waste bins, and this has huge implications, in my view, for city councils in terms of, if you like, the efficient provision of services and the energy that they use. And not only in the UK, but I think globally, with energy costs a real global issue at the moment, I think we're also likely to see the growth of distributed energy grids. So, yeah, I mean, I think, the continued demands from people who live in cities and city planners for an improved, if you like, quality of life, I think, will continue to see further innovation and user case studies that maybe, as I say, we haven't even thought of today. And I think, as we say in some of our marketing collateral, we certainly used to, I'm not sure if we say it anymore, but it's certainly true as it was then. I honestly believe, the opportunities really are endless. As I say, you can be busy fools in the IoT space because, if you're chasing every opportunity, you can, lose your focus. And I'm a firm believer, right? We fit within a certain part of the value chain and we're very good at it. And therefore we should stick to our knitting. And because, as I say, the opportunities really are endless.
Yeah. Well, what an apt way to nearly wrap up the podcast here today. I think, that is so poignant, consolidate and double down on what you know and focus on that and get better and better at that. And certainly within the industry that we're in, it's almost limitless. You could turn and get involved in many, many projects and many, many initiatives. And it may not provide the result you hoped or envisioned it might if you did it. So absolutely. Oliver, we've got a new feature on the show, and we ask our previous guests to ask a question for our new guests. And the question that we have for you today is from Bjorn Hansen, who is the head of IoT Division X of Telia. Bjorn asked a question: how far away are we before hyperscalers, the likes of Amazon and Microsoft, start to deliver connectivity as a cloud service? And if so, what would this mean for wireless logic? And what would your view be if they were to end up doing this? Would you piggyback it? How would you receive that?
I mean, I think IoT and the ecosystem it's all about partnerships, right? There's modules, there's airtime, there's analytics, a whole load of different stuff, right? In terms of what makes up a total solution. And I believe, therefore, it's all about partnerships. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, we have 2,500 solution providers. We deal with so many different partners along the value chain. And, I mentioned that, we integrate directly into at least 45 different network operators. And therefore, to me, this would be, will they come into this space? Probably. But I think also, like the network operators, we provide fantastic routes to market for the network operators. We don't, we attack a certain part of the market that we know that we're better at, we're more flexible, we offer better support services, etc. And it's a big, big part of the market. And we let the network operators in our particular part of the value chain concentrate on, if you like, their top 500 global customers, which is fantastic, So we operate in a very, specific space. And I think we're pretty good at doing it. And I think, therefore, to me, we already partner with people like Amazon. We already partner with people like Microsoft. So to me, this would be embracing their offering within ours. You take what I said about having 45 different network operators. A lot of those network operators have their own platforms. But with our Simpro, we're the platform of platforms. We integrate into their platform. So rather than having 45 different network agreements as a customer, you go to Wireless Logic. You have one platform, one integration, and you get all those 45 different network operators. And therefore, the partnership with people like Microsoft or Amazon, we can just piggyback on the back of that.
Fantastic, and that's such a lovely way to conclude the episode, in the sense that, again, within the industry, you see a lot of partnerships. There's other industries and where that just wouldn't happen, but I think people are really spurred on here to connect everything, to connect by the nature of what we're dealing with, and work with each other in order for that to happen.
Yeah.
And it's never going to be this utopia view, right? Of course, we're in business, but equally, the thought process and the goodwill that there is in order to make that happen is such a great thing.
And as I said, Tom, I think the market is growing at double digits, right? I mean, it's a huge market. There's a huge amount of market to go for. Huge amount of market. So, look, I think there's enough pie for everyone to have a little bit of a slice of, in my view.
Yeah, I agree. Oliver, thank you so much for joining us here today. Honestly, it's been really, really exciting, and to understand more about the business, it's been great. Where can people find out a bit more information about Wireless Logic?
I mean, we're on all the sort of social platforms. Our website is wirelesslogic.com. And we've got all, in terms of the different opcos and, offering and everything else on there. So, I mean, you should find us, as I say, whether it's LinkedIn or even Facebook or that type of stuff, you should find us.
Excellent. Oliver, thank you for coming on the show today.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
As always, guys, please follow the IoT podcast online. Get involved in the conversation. I don't care if you're connected, just as long as you're connected. Until next time, cheers.